Now, the other two integrity checks that we mentioned earlier were wetted elements and pressure side. So we want to check those because the model will not balance properly if we don't have our wetted elements defined and have the pressure on the correct side. So first thing we'll do is under view, we can say, what are our wettable elements? Well, we just imported polygon meshes, so by default, they are not wet. So we'll have to make them wet. And actually, if you recall way back when we were originally working with strakes, one of the options for a strake was the location. And the main reason for the location is that, if you define a strake as being on the bottom or the side, it will inherently be a wettable strake by default. You can change it, but it will initially be assigned as wettable. And if it's a deck or other, it won't be wettable. So that's one of the reasons for that location type in there. It doesn't affect what's created. It mainly just will tell Maestro whether or not it should be wettable by default. But it's very easy to change whether or not an element is wettable or not wettable. So since we have no wettable elements yet, what we can simply do is create a group, and we need to generate an ID number so it'll let us start adding things to it. But we grab one element on the side and say add by seed. And it'll start searching the hull, and it went all the way to the edge of the transom. And let's make sure it got everything up at the stem. And it looks like we got everything that we wanted, possibly not that element though. Let's look at another view, and yes, it did miss a couple here, so we will grab that try, and that appears to be on center line in the deck, so I think it was just the one try that it missed. And we'll also need the transom, so we will grab one element from the transom and say add by seed. And we don't actually need to create this group. We can simply right click in the group and say modify wettable. And we would like to change all of these to be wettable, so we'll just say yes. And we can refresh the model. And there's no apparent change here, but now if we say view wettable elements, we just have our shell. And there's also an option here to create a group where you can say extract wettable elements. Now, if you do wetted elements, you need a load case defined that has a water plane, so it knows which of the wettable elements are actually wet for that particular load case, and it'll create a group from those. But if you just say create a group of all wettable elements, it extracts everything that's defined as wettable, and this is only for hydrostatic pressure, and puts them all in a group. And this is very convenient when you want to check the model quickly, especially if you have a skeg or some other features, and you want to make sure there's no gaps. It's a little cleaner to view this version of the wetted elements than it is when you're looking at the entire model with the wireframe, because depending on how dense your mesh is, it can be a little difficult to see if there's a small missing try in that area. If you have a lot going on with this wireframe, it's much easier to review looking at this, trying to find a hole in there. And then to check the pressure side, we can view the pressure side by selecting pressure side. Now, the magenta side is the side that's going to take pressure. So in this case, we're all set. But for purposes of argument, let's use dynamic query, and we will flip the pressure side on a few of these. So if there were a couple in here that were backwards, you could go in and manually correct them, or it's much easier to just say consistent pressure side, and it'll correct everything so that they're all facing the same direction. Now, if by chance it had the inside as what it's selected to be, the consistent pressure side, you can simply flip the pressure side and it will reverse all of them. So it makes it very easy to fix and set your pressure side for the hull. And So this model will be ready to assign properties to and continue on.